Something is wrong with the machine. Your aberration slowly drain. You have your will to be. You have your will to be yourself.
Disband now. That is the message from officials in Portland, Oregon tonight, where protesters are facing a midnight deadline to leave their occupied encampment at a local immigration and customs enforcement facility. Garrett Tenney is tracking, and he's got the latest. I mean, the clock is ticking.
Yeah, things get interesting here in just a few hours because despite that deadline, some of these protesters say they are not going anywhere. Now, this protest in Portland has become one of the country's most visible of the Abolish ICE movement, and this makeshift camp next to an ICE office is complete with porta potties, furniture, and large wooden barricades. It has become home to a nonstop demonstration over the last 5 weeks, including several clashes with police. Portland's Democratic mayor has been an outspoken supporter of the protest, but on Monday, he told them it was time to move on, explaining that a bike path was being blocked by the camp and that it was becoming a public safety issue, not to mention a growing source of complaints from folks who live nearby.
The timing is right here, and particularly with one faction or one group of people deciding to move on to the next phase of the protest. We think this is a good time. We've always said that the camp itself with its wooden structures isn't sustainable. It's been a fluid situation, and we think the timing is right.
Just last week, Portland's mayor got himself into a bit of hot water after suggesting officers should be focusing on criminal activity, not on the city's pervasive homeless population, which prompted the police union president to blast the mayor for throwing officers under the bus for his own failed policies.
I've been a police officer here for 27 years. I've seen it going downhill. This city's become a cesspool. The main thing the mayor needs to stop doing is blaming other people for his failures.
Late Monday, police posted notices around the camp stating that anyone who sticks around past tonight's midnight deadline will face an arrest or citation. Today, some of the protesters responded by staging a mock execution of President Trump using a makeshift guillotine to chop the head off of a piñata, saying they have no plans to leave.
Come out here, make your stand, join us. We are going to be here. We are not going anywhere until the zero tolerance policy is lifted, until the last child is reunited with their parents, until not another local family is separated by ICE. That's what they do every day in this community.
And tonight, a majority of the protesters have packed up and headed home. There's only around a dozen or so who are refusing to leave. But all of those involved say even though this demonstration is over, their effort as a whole to get ICE abolished is just getting started.
Are you planning to stay?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us why.
Because this federal government agency shouldn't exist.
An Occupy ICE protester peeking out over the camp's plywood wall 24 hours after Portland's mayor asked him and others to
peacefully disengage.
But this man says as long as immigration and customs enforcement operates out of this building and under the president's zero tolerance policy, he wants to stay and draw attention to it.
I don't believe in what they stand for. I don't believe in what they're doing is right.
That said, we saw many move out today, some of them meeting downtown to announce they no longer want to be associated with the camp. They even have a new name, Abolish ICE PDX. We asked if they're just separating themselves because of the mayor's orders to move and because of mounting complaints from neighbors, local business owners, and others who say the protest makes them feel unsafe. They said no.
In terms of what might be kind of heated emotions or anything like that on the part of individual protesters, we have to remember that the reason everyone came in the first place is in response to seeing these horrific images of the conditions that children and families are being treated in ICE facilities. So anything that kind of comes as a result of that, we have to remember that the anger that people are expressing is really righteous and is really justified.
Regardless, some neighbors were glad to see the protest pack up.
No, it's about time they got out of here and let us have our city back so that we have the freedom to walk where we want to walk.
But not everyone is so relieved. This man is from Guatemala. He's a citizen. His nephew is not. He wishes the protest would stay.
This is the only way to fight, you know, to get the rights in America. Yeah, it's the only way.
last 5 weeks, there's been a lot going on outside that ICE building, from arrests and confrontations to a food cart being forced to close its doors.
That happening just over the weekend. Our team coverage continues now with Cole Miller, who has a look at just how we got to where we are tonight. Cole.
Jennifer, Jeff, it has been a whirlwind of a month and change. What started as that candlelight vigil morphing into that camp we just saw, hundreds of people there at one point. The question now, how much steam this movement has left, something we'll find out shortly.
Say it loud, say it clear, immigrants are welcome here.
On Father's Day, a gathering outside of that ICE building in southwest Portland. This group denouncing President Trump and his immigration policies.
Well, we're protesting the separation of families at the border.
It was just the beginning.
We are going to be here. It's going to be a long haul, but we're going to be here.
In the days that would follow, an occupation began to take shape with tents, signs, and even more people showing up, eventually shutting down that federal facility.
While we have shut this building down, they're still detaining people, they're still separating families, there's still detention centers here.
Amongst neighbors, the reactions were mixed.
I'm seeing it's getting out of line.
How are they getting out of line?
They are blocking the driveway where it's private property. It looks like a homeless camp, or I don't know, it looks like Woodstock.
A week after that interview, a wild morning. DHS officers clad in that riot gear sweeping in, taking back their building, arresting 7 people in all.
There was some, but nothing was violent or anything like that.
The protests, though, would continue. Just this past Friday, a visit to that camp by Joey Gibson and his Patriot Prayer entourage.
Take a walk with me.
The two groups exchanging their thoughts.
This is right outside my work.
And just yesterday, this food cart across the street, the Happy Camper, announcing it would be shutting down due to threats from those protesters, saying business has dropped by 80%.
10 to 20 individuals rushed the cart with customers to intimidate them to where they didn't want to come back.
I did reach out to the owners of Happy Camper, who you heard from there at the end of the story, to see if today's decision by the city would change their mind and keep their doors open. We did not hear back.
All right, now this video that's on your screen right now, if you have the chance to look at it, is really eye-opening. We shot bird's eye views of the camp with our drone, Sky 8, yesterday and today, and we put them side by side. Yesterday's view on the left, today's view on the right. You can see tonight some of the tents, tarps, and big wooden structures are gone, but there are plenty still left standing. There's also what looks like a lot of trash out here. So back out here live, Southwest Bancroft is open. That happened sort of middle of the afternoon, and once again, the mayor's deadline is midnight. We have had multiple neighbors walking up to us and telling again they're relieved to see this camp go. And one neighbor who's standing by told us she feels for the cause, as a lot of people around here do, but she said she wanted to say that she's grateful to DHS police officers for standing by through this and making them feel a bit more secure.
Moments ago, Portland police have arrived on scene enforcing the last remaining protesters out of the camp. Now, this is just a handful of protesters. We're looking at, 5, 6 protesters who are sitting and refusing to leave, and they're starting to get confrontational with the police officers. So they're all dressed in tactical gear, ready for anything that might happen. But right now, protesters say they're not willing to leave. They say that they're on public property, but officers are saying that this area of Bancroft Street in Southwest McAdam is now closed.
5:30 on this Wednesday, and here's a live look at the Occupy ICE camp from Chopper 6. The camp has sat along Southwest McAdam Avenue in South Waterfront District for about 5 weeks, and this morning it is coming down. Portland police moved in about an hour ago. They evicted the last of the protesters. There were about 6 or 7 remaining. We will get a live update on that eviction coming up in about a minute.
Breaking news on KGW News at Sunrise.
Welcome back this morning at 6 a.m. here on Sunrise. We have been following this breaking news on the South Waterfront. After 5 weeks, the Occupy ICE camp is now empty.
Yeah, from Sky 8, you can see all the trash left behind by those protesters. A cleanup crew is now headed in.
And we have team coverage here on Sunrise this morning. We do want to start with Tim Gordon. Tim, Police Chief Danielle Outlaw is about to start a news conference.
Right, we're expecting her to come up and speak at any time. We saw her go through the camp and then come back out. Don't see her at the moment. We heard 6 o'clock, but it may be a few minutes past that. So for now, we'll just show you the front of the Occupy ICE camp. It's still, structures up along Bancroft, a flag even still flying, but the campers are out. It was just before 4:30 this morning, and we can show you a video of this. Portland police made their move and went from the south entrance through the camp to this end, the north entrance, and contacted the few campers that were left, maybe as many as a dozen, maybe a few fewer than that. Police say it was a slow, methodical process, and things went well. There were no injuries or arrests in that process. From protesters we hear, they thought police were aggressive with batons and so forth. So a couple different accounts there. But in the end, the camp is now clear after 5 weeks, as you said, with many, many more protesters camping, above 100 at one point, but down to just a dozen or less. They were cleared out very early this morning, and they were cleared out for a specific reason, to catch the camp when there were as few people in there as possible, and also to clear this out and get the streets open as soon as possible today.
Yeah, so, it all had to do with what we thought would be best for the neighborhood, the people, the limited number of people that were in the camp right now. But really what our focus is right now is reopening the roadways, getting our contract crews in here. The police bureau is aware that the South Waterfront is OHSU has a lot of doctors' offices out here. People are going to be coming down to work, coming down to get medical treatment. So we want to make sure that the roads are accessible.
Portland Police Chief Danielle Outlaw expected to speak at any time. As soon as she does, we're going to carry that live for you and have the very latest and get her perspective on all this coming up. Now back to you.
You got it. We'll get right back to you. Thank you very much, Tim. Christine Pitawanich is continuing our team coverage. Christine, Tim mentioned the protesters, but you talked with some of those campers.
Yeah, and police say that they were slow, methodical about it, but the protester I spoke with said it was a lot more rough, that he felt that police came in very militaristically rather, and aggressively. Right now, though, I want to tell you I'm standing here at the corner of Southwest McAdam Avenue and Southwest Bancroft, where you heard Tim talk about the street is closed. This is where it's closed off. Federal police, you can see here, have taped things off. They've parked their vehicles. And if you look down a little ways, a little bit past the ICE facility, that is, of course, where protesters have set up camp for the last 5 or so weeks. Early this morning, we were here as police started coming through at about 4:30, maybe just a little bit before. Police started at the south end of the camp, going through to the north end of the camp. Things were really tense in the very beginning. A lot of yelling from the protesters, profanity, even a scuffle that broke out between a protester or a couple protesters and a counter protester, or someone who was there countering them, being aggressive as well. We heard from that protester, one of the protesters who was involved in that scuffle. Take a listen to what he had to say as to why that broke out.
Yeah, some guy who I believe lives in the building came out. I don't know if he was drunk or what. He was absolutely irate and out of control, very aggressive, screaming and yelling at people, trying to fight anybody he could, extremely aggressive. And then he full on video, punched a man in the face, decked him outright, and the police just said, "Sir, you need to go away."
Everything seemed to wind down a little bit. Police pushed us as well as protesters about a block north of the ICE facility, trying to get us away from the camp. I believe they're going through the camp, trying to clean things up right now. And our Tim Gordon is standing by to talk to Chief Danielle Outlaw about the police presence here. But as you may have heard earlier this morning, as we may have said, Mayor Ted Wheeler put a midnight deadline on things. Many of the protesters last night had already left prior to that midnight deadline, but about 8 or so protesters remained into this morning, staying true to their goal. They say they wanted to abolish ICE, but those protesters have been kicked out of their camp. They've scattered a little bit. At this point, as we can tell, as far as we can see, things are pretty quiet and calm, but we'll continue to monitor the situation and, of course, bring you live to the press conference with Chief Danielle Outlaw when she does make an appearance.
Thank you all for coming. I know it's short notice, but I just want to give you a quick update on what happened, what occurred this morning, and some decisions that were made. So last week, this all began, we're here about the Occupy ICE encampment, and we believe that it really got established and started up and running about June 17th, 2018. And last week, for a variety of reasons, the Portland Police Bureau determined that the conditions down here were no longer sustainable for a few reasons. We received, over a period of time, approximately 76 calls for service. Of those, about 41 were dispatch calls, meaning where officers actually responded down here. The remainder of those were handled either over the telephone or by other means for follow-up investigation. We also received at least 13 online complaints regarding the conditions at the camp or behaviors associated to members at the camp that have impacted the safety for livability of people, not just in this immediate area, but in the South Waterfront area. A little bit about this area, specifically the street and these roadways. It provides very critical access to the medical facilities that are down here, specifically critical care for cancer patients. Same thing with the need to provide supplies to OHSU down here. And there are multiple medical facilities in the area that call on ambulances and paramedics to transport patients during emergency medical situations. After I brought all of this attention to the mayor, he was fully supportive of moving forward to begin plans to clear the camp, and that was last week. With all of that said, this morning we decided to move ahead with the clearing of the camp, and at approximately 4:15, we brought several officers here to make sure that we had the ability to strategically and methodically move through and clear out the camp in a very safe way for everyone. And it's a good thing because not only did we, because of the posting, I think, it allowed people to self-select and disengage from the camp on their own. So by the time that we arrived here this morning, there were really only about 12 people that we encountered and had to ask to leave the camp. For the most part, everything was done with very little incident, the clearing of the camp itself. There were no arrests made, there were no citations issued, and it was only after the camp was cleared. We are now looking into reports of a use of a baton by one of our officers to pull apart or push apart people that were about to be actively engaged in some sort of physical altercation. We will look further into that. Any questions that I can do my best to answer right now?
Give us an idea of the nature of the complaints that you got that you decided to bring to the mayor's attention.
Yeah, so, you know, and interestingly enough, a lot of the detail came from what was reported in the media. And we found ourselves going back after to find out, to contact the reporting parties or those who had been deemed victims to get a little bit more information. A lot of information given to us regarding assaults or threats, intimidation, harassment. And then obviously what I didn't mention, but which is a very big issue in there, there are a lot of biohazard concerns as well. So safety-wise, public safety-wise, not just, you know, when you think about public safety, a lot of folks think about law enforcement, the police side of it. But there's fire hazards in there. There are also biomedical hazards in there. And because of those sorts of complaints, again, we knew we had to get ahead of it before it spiraled out of control.
I'm Michael Jordan. Stop it. Get some help.